When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
Alright, hello YouTube, welcome back to the Grease Goblins YouTube channel. Today's video, we are going to be continuing our Song of Ice and Fire reread, and in today's video we have Bran 3. This is a very, very short chapter. It's really just about Bran being awakened and his third eye being opened, and this is also where he's going to awake from his quote-unquote, I guess, dream slash coma. So this one's really short, as in, it's really about, I guess, Bran waking up. So again, it's a weird chapter because it comes after the really big events of the Sansa and Ned fallout chapters, resulting in Lady's death and kind of that rift between the two. We kind of have a slowing down of pace of Bran. That's always been my big complaint of Bran, is that Bran feels like he's a character that slows the story down a lot, and this is definitely one of those chapters, and I don't mind this chapter for Bran. I think it's some good development for his character, and also is really like, it's kind of the first chapter where it's really the foundation of Bran as a character and what we're going to get from him moving forward. But yeah, so this page is going to, or this chapter is going to begin on page 160. So Bran kind of notes that he has felt like he's been falling for days, and he hears this voice saying, "Fly." Because Bran is kind of in this state where he's really high up, but everything around is kind of black, but he can see the circle of what is going to happen when he hits the ground. And Bran says that he can't fly, so he continues to fall. But he notes that he will wake up right before he hits the ground. Now, this is a great idea because it's like, Bran is kind of viewing this as a dream, and I think everyone would, but is this some manipulation by Bloodraven? Would Bran actually have woken up regardless of what he does in this dream? Is it because he goes under the three-eyed crow's wing is the reason that he actually wakes up? It's an interesting idea, and to me, it's something Bran has to struggle with, and I think that's a very interesting idea of Bran looking at his own death. And will he accept it and play into the idea that he's just going to wake up, or does he try to take matters into his own hands? And that's an interesting idea for a Bran chapter. I think it's the most complexity we've seen from Bran so far, so I like that idea in this short chapter that we do get with Bran. And Bran also notes that he never falls. Again, noting on the idea that how unlikely and how unreal it is that Bran fell. And there's another idea we're going to talk about later on when Bran is kind of remembering what Jaime says, like the things we do for love, and the three-eyed crow tells him to forget that. I think that's an interesting point we're going to get to, but it is an interesting idea. Now the voice answers, well, what if you don't wake up? And again, that's what we just talked about. It's an interesting layer to this. And Bran kind of notes how this place is cold. There's no sun. There's no stars. It's very bleak and cold descent. He begins to cry, but the voice tells him to fly, to which Bran again says he can't. But the voice says, have you ever tried? And that's an interesting idea that I think applies not only to what Bran is trying to do here, is wake up, come back into consciousness, but it's this idea that if we look at the real world, there's so many people that think, I can't do this, I can't do that. And I think it's interesting to ask yourself, have you ever really tried to do it? Have you put time into being able to see if you really can do something? And that's an interesting question. I know that this is kind of a question that's being asked in a different context of something that flying as a human is not something we can physically do, but it's interesting the way the brain works, that people will think they can't do this or can't do that. For instance, or making excuses as to why you can't do something. I can't lose weight because of this or that. I can't, I can't have enough time to do this, that. But do you? I think it's an interesting question that is being posed here, and that's going to get us into page 161. So moving on, Bran notes that the voice is a crow flying down with him, and the crow asks for corn, similar to Mormont's raven. I wanted to kind of point that out because as we go into Jon's chapters, it's very interesting to note that Bloodraven is very active in Mormont's raven, and this is just some of that subtle foreshadowing to that idea. Bran then asks, are you really a crow? To which the voice responds, are you really falling? And again, I think this is interesting the way this chapter is being phrased. what is reality? What is Bran actually experiencing here? And that's something Bran is going to have to ask. And as we go further with his storyline, and even going into Winds of Winter, what is real and what is reality? How can Bran possibly shape that reality? What can he do and make things real or not real? And I think it's an interesting idea going into Bran. And that Bran again says that this is a dream. And the crow says, you will die when you hit the ground. And I love those added stakes to this, that this Bran chapter, we don't know what would happen. Let's say Bran doesn't fly and he chooses to go with this is a dream. What would have happened? What would happen? And Bran again continues to cry. And the crow says, to fly is very easy. And I think the crow, being a bird, is saying it's easy to fly, but I think what is actually being said here is that it's easy to warg into a crow. We see that the easiest form of this warging ability is on birds, animals with not as much willpower or brain power, and that's why Bran is able to later do it into Hodor as well. But that is what he's kind of getting at, that Bran should be able to warg into a bird fairly easily compared to other things. Now, the voice then says maybe Bran has wings too, again implying that Bran maybe has this power and the ability to change into a bird. And Bran feels for wings, but the voice again backs up what I said, that there are different kind of wings. And Bran starts to remember what he looks like and what happened as he sees something like Jaime saying, the things I do for love, to which the voice says, forget that. And it's interesting because we know that Bran is not going to remember what actually happened, like how he fell out of the tower, what all transpired there, and what he heard and saw. And it's interesting that the three-eyed crow would try to suppress that memory from Bran. And could the idea be there that the three-eyed crow wants certain events to happen? And if Bran was to say these things and a witness was present, it wouldn't really allow for Bran to ever be in the situation where he goes north. And I think that could be an interesting idea as to why those memories are suppressed from Bran and he doesn't remember things like that. That'll get us into page 162. So continuing on, Bran asks what the voice is doing to him. And the voice responds, teaching you how to fly. And the voice says that they are flying right now, and that every flight begins with a fall. Which is, again, another interesting idea if we can, pertain that to real life. You're never good at a skill right from the beginning, unless you're just supernaturally good at something. Usually it takes practice, and usually in that first time practicing, you fail. Usually when you say you're learning how to ride a bike, or you're trying to learn how to swim, you fail on that first time. And it takes a little bit of practice getting back up and continuing to try. And that is what I really believe is being said here to Bran, that Bran is trying. And if he keeps working at it, he can eventually learn to fly. And Bran is told to look down, and Bran doesn't want to do this, and he's kind of freaking out, but the voice says, look down. And Bran sees the world. He sees our characters. He sees Catelyn sailing south. He sees Robb and Luwin in Winterfell, Ned at the Trident. He sees across the sea the Dothraki, and lastly the north, and also north of the wall, and sees the heart of winter. And that is when he looks away, and the crow notes, that is why you must live. So again, this foreshadows, especially in the later books, that Bran has some big role when it comes to fighting the others and learning this information, and that is why it's so important for him to go north, and why the three-eyed crow or Bloodraven really manipulates Bran into coming north and has these events happen so that that can all happen to where they can beat the others. That is what it kind of feels like. And also I think the idea of Bran kind of being destined for this next person to take on these old powers of the three-eyed crow. And that moves us into page 163. The crow then appears to have a third eye. And he tells Bran he must choose to live or die. And Bran sees thousands of people impaled on ice spikes dead below him. And this, I think, implies that Three-Eyed Crow has tried this a lot. He has tried to figure out who is this next person that can be this, I guess, next body for this knowledge and this power. And it hasn't worked. There are plenty of people that have failed this test, really. And Bran remembers in this moment his father's advice of the only time a man can be brave is when he is afraid. And at this, Bran begins to fly, leading us into the last page of the chapter, page 164. And as he's flying, and Bran is very excited, like he's flying. That's a crazy thing. Three-Eyed Crow starts to peck and open up in between his two eyes, like right here, opening his third eye. But eventually, as this happens, the dream fades into reality, and Bran wakes, and he notes that there's nothing on his forehead. But us, as the audience, as we go forward, know that Bran's powers have been kind of awakened for real. And after this, we see a warmth come into the room, and this is kind of how he names Summer. Because by the end of this chapter, and this page specifically, Robb comes into the room, and Bran says his wolf's name is Summer. And that ends out the chapter. So again, like I said, guys, this is a very short chapter. This is by far the quickest recording I've done for one of these chapter analyses. We're only, as I'm looking at the screen, about 12 minutes into recording. So I guess I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, nice little short one. At least it's a nice little break for me this week. Since the last, I feel like the last couple chapters have been pretty big, all large chapters, very impactful. So this is kind of like a little break to kind of catch up on the chapters we've done in the past. And thank you guys all for watching. I know this is all your guys' favorite character, Bran. And I'll see you guys all in the next chapter. What is the next chapter? Let me look at my book real quick. We actually have Catelyn. So we're going to see some Catelyn chapter, and she's one of my favorite POVs, so I hope you guys all are excited for that, and I'll see you guys all in the next video. Bye, guys.